This is too human. I'm Scrappy, and this is where it all began.
I was never taught who I could be. I was only taught what I was for. When I was 5, I entered the foster care system until I was 9 years old. And just like when I was home, being in foster care, I didn't feel like I belonged really anywhere. I will say, though, that when I was in the system, I was around a lot more suburban areas and a lot of different culture. So it did let me access a lot of different things. I got to meet a lot of different people, and I did solidify some friendships while I was in foster care. Very few, but after a few years in the system, I did have some stability in the sense of I had a single family take care of me. But the first couple months were extremely traumatic. I remember the day that I was taken away with my mom having essentially an asthma attack, and the police and this woman, and I'm putting my things into a trash bag, and they're driving me with one of my other brothers. I am the youngest of 6. So it was just me and one of my brothers who was closest in age with me to an unknown location with strangers. And these strangers were very neglectful. And these were the first core memories I have as a child. Crying, wondering what was going on. There were some cultural differences, and now that I'm self-realized autistic, I can see why, but I would refuse to eat certain foods that weren't familiar to me. I have one memory of that first month where we had a babysitter, and she, behind my emergency placement foster parents' backs, made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich so I would eat, because I was so distraught and I wasn't even eating. I remember being sick and them putting me in a room with a mattress on the floor, no sheets, and a pan, a pan next to me to vomit in because I was sick. I remember not being able to take my stuff when I left that place. My little trash bag, I couldn't take any of it, and I don't know why. When I transitioned to my full-time foster parents, they did take myself and 2 of my brothers that were the closest in age with me. And I didn't know where my sister was. I didn't know where my 2 older brothers were. We were all together, and for a while it seemed okay. I think it kind of created this fairy tale of a family that, could take me places, and, they were much better off than my own family. And I thought, oh, okay. But it was a lot. And they had their own styles of teaching and discipline. And I know that they tried their best. And I'm thankful for that. But it wasn't always perfect. And it was very painful at times too. And when you're a foster care kid, if your foster parents want to go on vacation and they don't want to take you, you can go to someone else. And that's where I went a few times. And these people were also abusive. These strangers. I didn't know they were watching me temporarily doing things that, as a child, I didn't know was okay. Honestly, the pendulum swings both ways when I think about how I felt, being in foster care and with that, you do see your parents like once a week at least. And then you also have to go to therapy and all that as a kid. And grabbing crystal because I'm like, whew, it's heavy stuff. But there was always a longing to be to feel like I belonged somewhere. And I think seeing my parents and then not being with them was confusing. And when I would go visit them, it painted a little bit of a different picture than what I ever really remembered when I was really little. And, my parents did all the things that they were supposed to do, right? They went to therapy, they did all the paperwork, did all the things, and slowly they were able to get my siblings back, and I was the last one to return home. And, I remember that day when I was sitting with my, what's she's called? My social worker. Remember sitting in her car, we're in front of the elementary school I was attending at the time, sitting in the back seat, and she looks at me and she's like, "Are you ready to go home?" And I just remember being like, yes, like I was so ready. And the reality of moving home was painful, scary. At first, it felt okay, but I would isolate a lot. My brothers would tease me. They had a nickname for me because I was highly emotional. And I think that sometimes they felt like my mom was favoriting me over them. But really, I was super dysregulated all the time. And really, over time, it kind of switched where instead of I took on this role of adult. And, it actually even happened before that, this role of responsibility. When I was still in foster care, when my brothers left, my foster parents took on other kids, one being a baby and then 2 siblings. And I went from the role of being the youngest to being the eldest in that role. And I think that did carry over in some respects, in a sense of where, for a little while I was transitioning and settling in. But the older I got, the more I tried to connect with my mom. I saw that she wasn't able to support me. I was bullied in school. I would reach out to her and ask for help, and she wouldn't know what to do, or she would give me pretty terrible advice, saying, at one point I remember I got bullied for doing something, and actually I stuffed my bra. We can just go there. I can be honest. I remember stuffing my bra and wanting to be like all the other girls that were like, it's so silly, right? I wanted to just fit in, and I told her that, and I told her how, people were making fun of me for it. And of course, right, we're kids, but also it was like, it became bullying. And my mom at one point said, "At least you have friends." So out of touch, right? Because she didn't know, she was suffering herself. So being home, I had my bedroom initially on the first floor, and I had a bunk bed, and the bunk bed top had all my stuffed animals and stuff. And I would play often by myself and, have my stuffed animals, and I would just have my little tape recorder and record myself pretending I'm a rock star or interviewing people. Ironically, that's what I want to do, is I want to interview more people and connect with people and make music, eventually sing. That's a big thing in me. I love singing. I feel like singing really helps me move through things, the reverberation. But I was alone often and isolated often. And when I finally did make some friends, There's a lot of contingencies around it all. My mom would make me do things like chores, but then if I did them, she would add on more and more things. So she really tried to, I think, restrict what I accessed in life. And I mean, my dad would work overnights and he would drink and then come home and then do it again. He would be sleeping. And my mom would generally be in her room all day, super depressed. And I would play this role of wanting to access some type of friends, not feeling safe at all to have anyone at the house, wanting to do things, listening to my mom and doing the things that she said she wanted me to do, but not actually following through and letting me do those things. So it was a lot of control. And, at times I even remember her not being available, not being around, just having the door shut and locked, her bedroom shut and locked. Yeah. No, I recently found, it's probably last year, some letters that I wrote to her, asking her how she was doing, if she was going to come out for Thanksgiving dinner. I think it was one of the letters I probably slipped under her door. And yeah, I was always checking in on her, trying to be the good daughter, trying to be the good person, being of service to her the best I could. When my dad was around, like actively around the house, whether it was the weekends or something, I would hide or I would just do what he asked me to do and then disappear. Um, yeah. I think a lot of it had to do with me being the youngest girl. My sister did not return home, and my other siblings were relatively older, so it was really just the younger kids that were around. But I was always alone. My brother that's closest to me in age is 5 years older than me, and at a certain point, everyone did whatever they wanted to, and I was the one that was the good kid, right? And listened to everything and stayed quiet, did the things I was supposed to do, and I felt myself really just being in a box. I eventually got my room to be moved upstairs. It's a cape, but it has like those ceilings that are like slanted sideways, kind of. And I painted the walls. I played music. I did everything in my little bubble of containment. I didn't really have control of a lot in my life. So my little world was mine, and I wouldn't really be able to sleep, but I'd watch the same movies over and over again, which brought me comfort, and eventually I'd fall asleep late at night. And I just did my best every day to make it through school, to make it through life, because nothing felt right. I always felt, even in school, as the outcast. And as I got older, and I eventually found friend groups, it was kind of the same pattern where I was always of service to others, but there's never truly, I think, a lot of genuine connections. Like, I always felt like I got along with a lot of different people, but never found like my people. And now realizing, fast forwarding to today, I'm like, it makes sense, because I was heavily masking and I just wanted to be liked. I just wanted to be enough. And, these patterns of hiding myself, keeping quiet, being likable, led up like to my adulthood and beyond, but being a young girl pretty much locked away in her room for most of her childhood into adulthood, like it. And I didn't even mention like religious trauma. That was another component. Like, I had to go to church with my mom all the time. And it wasn't until I was 13 that I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. Because she would compare me to the other girls at the church, and she would, like, I didn't like to wear dresses. I didn't want to, I don't know, like, it just felt so rigid and forced. And I was the only one in my family that had to go, right? My mom made me go, and my brothers didn't. And, not just Sunday school, not just Sunday church, but Bible studies, and several times a week I was being forced to go to church, right? And I never felt like I was enough. I never felt like I could be like those other kids, those other families, but they had different life. They had different lives than me and my family. And even back then I could kind of see how what's the word? Superficial they were. And it's confirmed today. Like, I've talked to my mom even recently about stuff, and we've grown so much. We've done a lot of healing together, and I've done a lot of my own inner child healing to be able to have some type of relationship with my mom. But, she even said, like, they would tell you, like, you don't, you don't tell people how you're actually doing when they ask you how you are. You just say, I'm great. Then my mom would be like, not able to be herself. And I felt that too, right? We had to mask ourselves when we went to church and pretend to be okay. But before that, Harry Potter was coming out, and I'm like, ooh. And my mom straight up told me I was going to hell for reading Harry Potter, which my whole class was reading Harry Potter, right? And that ingrained in me, like, I'm gonna go to hell, like, good and bad, all these things, right? Control, do what you're supposed to, don't ask questions. What I say is what's right. What God says is what's right. You're born a sinner. Because I like incense and I like all this stuff. I'm a sinner. What? Now I can almost I'm laughing at it, almost like the process of it. But it fucked me up. It fucked me up. And to this day, even, I sometimes have to ask my partner, and I have to also then remember that there's no such thing. Like, I'm like, am I good? Am I a good person? What is good? What is good and bad? Who decided that? Right? It's cultural. But my mom did her best. I know she was doing her best at the time, but I didn't even know how to be a girl or a woman. I had no foundation. And the foundation for my learning was a Bible, like a text that was interpreted by a bunch of white dudes that was literally about women being under control of men. I think that's the thing. Like, ever since I was a kid, sorry, buddy. Ever since I was a kid, I knew I had faith. I would pray to God when I was in foster care. I had some type of faith. I did believe that there's a higher power. I do believe in certain teachings that I learned about being a good human being. But certain things I had to be like, no, so reverbing, come back here, coming back to 13, I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. I finally had some autonomy, and no one was going to make me go to church anymore. And I stopped going. And I'm glad I stopped. But it didn't change a lot of the things that were going on in my home life, in my life, I never felt like I was provided enough for. I'm thankful I had a roof over my head. I did have food. I had to learn. I would take care of myself a lot. I would feed myself a lot ever since I was really little. I got ISS because I was late to school so much in high school. But that was because I couldn't sleep, and I was in a very toxic home, and they punished me for it. It's all these systems that have been created do not support kids and do not support the people it's actually supposed to be supported for, right? And it's all pretty messed up, because up to that point and even beyond, like, this is why I went to school to become a psychologist. And at first I wanted to be a social worker. It's because I was learning that I was like born into it, that my value is what I could do for people. It was always about how I could show up for others. It was always about, oh, I'm valued and I'm seen when I can do something for you. And intermittently, it does feel good to help others. But at what point, right? I was born and self-identified as the helper. It didn't really seem like I had a choice from the beginning, right? I had to earn everything. Time, space. If I didn't have value, I better not be seen, right? And it's just like, and I believed it all. So I was never taught who I could be, what the potential was in my life. I was only taught what I could be used for. And it took 30 some odd years to realize that no one can teach you who you are. You have to find it for yourself. But I think parents are really they should be there to support you, right? Have that little foundation for a little soft landing when you fall, reminding you that it's okay, you can get back up, giving you a place to figure out who you are, giving you guidelines and parameters. But honestly, I learned what not to do. And I learned that I'm much more than the things I do for others. And it's still a pattern. It's still a thing I'm working on. And I was the little girl, right? Writing my mom letters, trying to heal things that weren't mine to heal. It was never mine to fix. My parents, all of this chaos that young children witness, right? That I'd witnessed. I always thought it was my duty to fix. And that's really it. That's the work. That's the work I had to really look at. And I'm still kind of looking at it still, because there's still times where things come up and I'm like, I want to take full charge and like help, right? I want to help my mom. I want to help my family. But I've really actually had to do the opposite and just take big steps back. Big boundary setting. I was so small trying to fix everything, but I didn't have the tools to fix, right? I didn't have the tools yet. And there's so much more to the story, right? And as we go, I'm going to keep sharing, but when you're just a person trying to figure it all out and try to fix it all, and you don't have the tools, that's where you begin, right? We discover what we need through curiosity. And if you're an adult like me, you've maybe had to create your own toolkit. And maybe you don't have a toolkit yet, or you want one. You don't know where to begin. And I think for me, it was just at a certain point, I'm just like, I don't want to be like this. Well, no, it wasn't a certain point. It was many points, many learned moments. What I've also learned is that you can be whatever you want to be. I guess I could finish with like transitioning into college. But when I was graduating high school, my dad told me that if I wanted to go to college, I'd have to join the military. And I was seriously looking into that. But maybe it's there's like, God, it's probably all the Scorpio in me. I don't know. I'm always about evolution. And also, if someone tells me I can't do something in certain regards, I will figure it out. So I went to community college instead. It was like, ha! But the irony is that, I focused on psychology because my mom told me I would never be a successful artist. But I always minored in art. I still always will be like, you tell me I can't, I'm gonna try. And the irony now is that I'm coming back to the things I most enjoy as a kid, right? Sharing stories like my own, creating artwork, painting, a love of music, a love of song, even connecting with the earth and nature. That was actually one of the few core memories as well. Just had flash in my brain when I got to the first permanent, my permanent foster parents' home. That they're the ones that had me for years. We moved a couple times, but the first house I was at, they had a brook in the back and a playground, and the playground was next to this big tree with moss, and it was one of the few times I think in my childhood I ever felt a little safe, and I was by myself talking with the spiders and the moss and feeling so connected for a minute, feeling so grounded for those few breaths, the few times I would be able to just really breathe. And I think it was only for a moment that I felt that in my young adulthood. And I think those glimpses of peace and serenity really made me realize that there is more to this existence than just suffering. I definitely internalized the suffering, and I sometimes thought I caused the suffering or I deserved the suffering. And I think that's part of that dogmatic type of religious teaching, your suffering is yours. And I don't believe in heaven and hell. I think heaven is here on earth and we create our own hell. I think that to create heaven on earth within ourselves, we might need some different soil, right? We need some other medicine. We need some other nutrients because certain things aren't working, and that's okay. But knowing when it's no longer working and taking the initiation, right? First making that choice, and then taking the steps that you need to make the decisions for yourself, to make those changes. But I didn't even know that was a thing for a long time. And so I'm so thankful to be here and to be able to share my story and to be able to talk a little bit, because I don't know a lot of people that were in foster care. I know a lot of people that have had traumatic childhoods though, and although all this pain that I've gone through was hard, it's taught me a lot of things about myself. That even in the most painful moments, that I'm kind and caring to others. I really try to have little judgment for others and the way they choose to live their lives, simply knowing we don't know what people are experiencing. And just also knowing that you do have choice, that you're much more powerful than your circumstances, you're much bigger than what others tell you, that you're worthy and you're loved and you're expansive. Your existence is a miracle. So, yeah, this is where it all began. This is like really where the Scrappy Witch was unearthed. I've always been pretty scrappy with my whole life, really. Getting creative, finding creative solutions to interesting problems. And I'm just really, really thankful to be here and share it, process it, and grow from it, become stronger, and help others along the way. Because I think that's kind of what it's all about. At least that's what I'm here for. It's my duty to share my story. It's my duty to remind you that you're not alone. And that despite what the world might have told you, it's not your truths. Only you know what your truths are. I think we'll end it there. I love you. And you know what? I'll share who we do this for, who this video is dedicated to. That little girl. This is one of our visits that we had as kids. Go to the park, and it's my dog, Taffy, when we were younger. Love you. Love you.